I'm Wesley Boone, senior groundskeeper and exhumation specialist at Resurrection Cemetery in Asheville, North Carolina. And 3 weeks ago, I walked away from 22 years of experience and a pension that was just 7 years from full vesting. I've spent more than 2 decades opening graves, relocating remains, and managing burial plots across 4 different cemeteries in the Blue Ridge region. I've handled everything from routine disinterments for family relocations to mass grave excavations for historical preservation projects. I've worked through ice storms, summer heat waves that turned the clay soil into concrete, and floods that exposed caskets I had to rebury with my own hands. I've seen bodies in every state of decomposition you can imagine, from perfectly preserved to completely skeletal. I found jewelry tangled in rib cages, love letters tucked into coffin linings, and photographs that crumbled to dust the moment air touched them. But what I'm about to share with you is the one exhumation that shattered everything I thought I understood about death, decay, and what happens to us after we're laid to rest. It's the case that robbed me of sleep for 73 consecutive nights, that made my hands shake every time I picked up a shovel, and that ultimately drove me to abandon the only profession I've ever known. I've never told anyone the complete story, not my wife of 19 years, not the therapist I saw for 6 months afterward, not even Father Michael at St. Catherine's, where I've attended Mass every Sunday since I was 7 years old. But I need to tell someone before the weight of it crushes whatever's left of my sanity. Resurrection Cemetery sits on 48 acres of rolling hillside about 6 miles outside downtown Asheville. It's one of the oldest burial grounds in Buncombe County, established in 1871, with sections dating back to before the Civil War. The older sections feature hand-carved granite markers and family mausoleums built by stonemasons whose craft has been dead for a century. The newer sections have flat bronze plaques embedded in manicured grass, easier to mow around, more efficient for modern cemetery management. I knew every section, every path, every oak tree older than my grandfather. I could navigate the grounds blindfolded at midnight and tell you whose grave I was standing on just by the slope of the earth beneath my boots. The incident occurred on March 14th of this year, a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were always slow, the day we scheduled complex exhumations that required extra time and care. The work order came through the previous Friday from the county coroner's office. Standard relocation request. The family of one Grace Hargrove wanted her remains moved from her original plot in Section 7 to the family mausoleum in Section 12, where her daughter and son-in-law had been interred 6 months earlier. The paperwork listed her date of death as November 8, 2017, 7 years and 4 months in the ground. Based on our soil composition and her burial depth, I expected moderate decomposition, probable coffin deterioration, standard procedure all around. I arrived at the cemetery at 6:15 that morning, my usual time. Dawn was just breaking over the mountains, painting the granite markers in shades of amber and rose. My crew consisted of Dylan McCree, who'd been working grounds maintenance for 11 years, and Travis Larkin, our equipment operator with 8 years of excavation experience. We'd completed 47 exhumations together as a team. We knew each other's rhythms, could work for hours with minimal conversation, reading each other's movements like dancers who'd rehearsed the same routine 1,000 times. We located Grace Hargrove's grave in Section 7 at 6:43. The marker was simple polished granite, 2 feet high, with her name, dates, in a single line of inscription, "Forever in our hearts." The grass around it was well maintained, indicating regular family visits. Someone, probably her daughter before her own death, had planted daffodils that were just beginning to bloom. I made a note to transplant them to the mausoleum site afterward. Those small gestures matter to grieving families. Dylan set up the equipment tent while Travis positioned the mini excavator. We always use tents for exhumations, providing privacy and protection from weather. More importantly, they shield the work from curious onlookers who don't understand that disinterment is a respectful, methodical process, not a macabre spectacle. I reviewed the burial records one final time. Grace Hargrove had been interred at a depth of 4 feet, 8 inches in a Batesville steel casket with a protective concrete vault, standard for modern burials in our cemetery. The vault prevents ground collapse and protects the casket from soil pressure and groundwater. It also means we have to excavate more carefully to avoid damaging the vault lid. Travis started the excavator at 7:09. The machine's hydraulic arm bit into the soil with practiced precision, removing earth in controlled scoops. I supervised from ground level, watching for any sign we were approaching the vault. Our soil is primarily red clay mixed with decomposed granite, dense and heavy when wet, hard as brick when dry. After 6 days without rain, it was dry. The excavator's bucket left clean, almost polished walls as it carved into the earth. We hit the vault lid at 8:37, exactly where it should have been according to the burial depth recorded in our logs. Travis shut down the excavator and climbed down, while Dylan and I descended into the excavation with shovels to clean the vault lid by hand. This part always requires manual labor. We need to expose the lid completely, remove all soil from its surface, and locate the lifting points before we can raise it with the excavator's straps. The vault lid was concrete, slightly weathered but intact. I've opened hundreds of vaults, and you develop a sense for how they should look after specific periods of time. This one appeared normal, appropriately aged for 7 years underground. Dylan and I worked methodically, brushing soil away from the edges, exposing the seal line where the lid met the base. That's when I noticed the first irregularity. The seal line was too clean. Vault seals aren't airtight. They're designed to protect against water and soil intrusion, not to create a hermetic environment. Over 7 years, you expect to see some soil staining, maybe root intrusion if trees are nearby, mineral deposits from groundwater. This seal looked almost pristine, as if the vault had been closed last week instead of 7 years ago. "Dylan, come look at this," I called up. He peered down into the excavation, then climbed down beside me. "What am I looking at?" "The seal. Does that look right to you?" He ran his gloved hand along the edge, frowning. "It's clean. Really clean. Too clean," I said. "But the rest of the vault shows a normal aging. See the discoloration on top? That's consistent with 7 years of mineral seepage through the soil. But the seal line itself looks fresh." Dylan stood back, studying the vault from a different angle. Maybe they used a different sealant, something more resistant to deterioration? It was a reasonable explanation. Burial vault technology had improved over the years. Maybe the funeral home had used a newer compound. I made a mental note to check with Whitfield and Sons Funeral Home, the facility that had handled Grace Hargrove's burial, but decided to proceed with the exhumation. We had a schedule to keep. We attached the lifting straps to the vault lid at 9:02. Travis operated the excavator from above, raising the concrete lid slowly and steadily. The seal broke with a soft hiss, and I expected the usual rush of stale air mixed with decay, the smell that no amount of experience ever makes pleasant. Instead, I smelled nothing. Absolutely nothing. "You getting any odor?" I asked Dylan. He sniffed the air, shook his head. "Nothing. That's weird, right?" "That's impossible," I said. "Even with a good seal, even with minimal decomposition, there should be something. Gases build up, organic materials break down. There's always an odor." We lowered a work light into the vault. The casket appeared intact, the steel showing minimal corrosion. That alone was unusual, but not unprecedented. High-quality caskets in well-sealed vaults can resist deterioration for decades. But combined with the pristine seal and the absence of any odor, my professional instincts were screaming that something was wrong. "Let's get it up," I said. We attached straps to the casket itself, and Travis lifted it carefully from the vault. The weight felt right, maybe 300 pounds, consistent with a steel casket containing human remains. We set it on the ground beside the excavation at 9:28. Cemetery protocol requires that we open the casket to verify the remains before transport, ensuring we're moving the correct individual. It's a crucial step, and in 22 years, I'd never skipped it. I opened the casket at 9:31. Grace Hargrove lay inside, and she looked like she'd died yesterday. Not preserved, not embalmed to an unusual degree, not mummified or dried out. She looked fresh. Her skin had natural color, a pale peach tone you'd see on a living person who spent most of their time indoors. Her hair, silver gray and cut short, looked soft and lustrous. Her hands folded across her chest showed no signs of decomposition, no skin slippage, no discoloration. She wore a blue dress, the fabric unwrinkled and vibrant, not faded or deteriorated. I stood there for what felt like an hour but was probably 30 seconds, my brain refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. This was professionally impossible. Embalming delays decomposition, it doesn't stop it. After 7 years, even the best embalming job results in significant changes. The skin dries out, becomes leathery or waxy, colors fade to gray or brown, tissues shrink, features distort. What I was looking at violated every principle of post-mortem decomposition I'd learned in 2 decades of experience. "Wes?" Dylan's voice was quiet, uncertain. "What the hell?" Travis had climbed down from the excavator and was standing at the edge of the excavation, staring into the casket. "Is that normal? That doesn't look normal." "It's not normal," I said. My voice sounded distant, like someone else was speaking. "It's not possible." I reached out with a gloved hand and touched Grace Hargrove's forearm, half expecting it to crumble at contact. Her flesh was firm, yielding slightly under pressure like living tissue. Not rigid with rigor mortis, which dissipates within days anyway. Not soft with decay. Not hard with mummification. It felt like she was sleeping. I jerked my hand back. "Travis, get Raymond Puckett on the phone. Tell him we need him here immediately." Raymond Puckett was our cemetery director, a man with 34 years in the funeral industry who'd seen everything there was to see. If anyone could explain this, it was him. While Travis made the call, I pulled out my phone and took photographs. The casket interior, the body, close-ups of her hands and face. Evidence, documentation, proof that I wasn't losing my mind. "There's something else," Dylan said. He was looking at the casket's interior lining. "Look at this." The lining was white satin, typical for mid-range caskets. It should have shown staining from decomposition fluids, possible mold growth, at minimum some discoloration from age and moisture. Instead, it looked factory fresh, as if the casket had been lined yesterday. Even the small pillow beneath Grace Hargrove's head was pristine, the fabric still plump and unstained. Raymond Puckett arrived at 10:06. He climbed down into the excavation without a word, looked into the casket for a long moment, then stepped back and removed his glasses to clean them. A nervous habit I'd seen him do hundreds of times over the years. "How long's she been down?" he asked. 7 years, 4 months, since November 8th, 2017. It's all documented. "And the vault seal was intact when you opened it?" "Completely intact. Actually, it looked too good, too clean." Raymond put his glasses back on and leaned over the casket again. He touched her hand the same way I had, pressing gently on the flesh. Then he lifted her eyelid with his thumb, examining the eye beneath. I saw his jaw tighten. "Her corneas are still clear," he said. "They should be clouded, probably completely deteriorated by now. Her sclera should be discolored. This is..." He trailed off, shaking his head. "Impossible," I finished for him. "I've never seen anything like this. Not even close." He stood up straight, his expression troubled. "We need to contact the funeral home, find out what kind of embalming they did. And we need to call the coroner's office. This isn't right." He made the calls while the 4 of us stood around the open casket. Nobody speaking, all of us staring at the impossibility before us. I've been around death my entire adult life. I understand decomposition, the biological processes that break down organic tissue. I know that certain conditions can slow decay. Cold temperatures, dry environments, sealed containers. But those conditions leave telltale signs: desiccation, adipocere formation, mummification. What I was looking at showed none of these signs. Grace Hargrove looked like she could open her eyes and sit up. Mitchell Daughtry, the director of Whitfield & Sons Funeral Home, arrived at 11:15. He'd brought the embalming records with him, and we reviewed them standing beside the excavation. Standard arterial embalming with formaldehyde-based fluid. Cavity embalming, nothing unusual. The embalmer had been Jesse Underwood, a licensed professional with 16 years of experience. "Jesse's good at his job," Mitchell said, "but he's not a miracle worker. What you're describing shouldn't be possible with standard embalming." He looked into the casket, and I watched his professional composure crack. "Sweet mother of God, how long did you say?" 7 years, 4 months. That's not possible. It's just not possible. He pulled out his phone and called Jesse Underwood, putting it on speaker. Jesse, it's Mitchell. I'm at Resurrection Cemetery with an exhumation. Grace Hargrove, buried November 2017. You did the embalming. Do you remember anything unusual about the case? Hargrove. Jesse's voice came through tinny but clear. Yeah, I remember her. Cancer patient, died in hospice. Nothing unusual about the case at all. Standard prep, standard cosmetic work. Why? She looks like we buried her last week. There was a long silence. Come again. She's perfectly preserved, no decomposition, no discoloration. She looks alive, Jesse. That's impossible. I use standard fluids, standard procedures. There's no way. Another pause. Wait, I do remember something. When I was doing the arterial injection, the fluid took really well, like unusually well. Usually you get some resistance, some backflow, especially with cancer patients because their circulatory systems are compromised. But with her, it was like the vessels were perfect, like she just died. I remember thinking it was odd, but I figured she just had good hospice care, kept her hydrated until the end. Could that explain this level of preservation? No, absolutely not. Maybe she'd look good for a year, 18 months at most, but 7 years? Something else is going on. Mitchell ended the call. The county coroner, Amanda Blake, arrived at noon. She was a no-nonsense woman in her mid-50s with a background in forensic pathology. She examined Grace Hargrove for nearly 20 minutes, taking her own photographs, checking vitals that couldn't possibly show anything, finally stepping back with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Genuine bewilderment. Her tissue shows no signs of decomposition, she said. No putrefaction, no skin slippage, no bloating, no discoloration. Her hair and nails appear to have continued growing post-mortem, which is actually a myth because that's not biologically possible. But I'm seeing what looks like several months of growth. Her fingernails need trimming, and her hair is longer than it appears in her funeral photographs. She pulled up a photo on her phone, the obituary picture from Grace Hargrove's funeral. In the photo, her hair was cut in a short pixie style, barely covering her ears. In the casket, her hair reached past her collar. Hair and nails don't grow after death, I said. The tissue dries out and retracts, making them appear longer. That's just an optical illusion. I know that, Amanda said sharply. I'm telling you what I'm seeing, and what I'm seeing contradicts everything I know about forensic pathology. She looked at Raymond. I'm ordering an autopsy. We need to transport the body to the medical examiner's facility immediately. The family won't like that, Raymond said. The family can take it up with my office. This is now an active investigation. They transported Grace Hargrove's body at 12:45. We closed up the excavation, filled in the grave, restored the site. We didn't talk much. What was there to say? We'd all witnessed something that defied explanation, something that violated the basic laws of biology and decay. I went home that night and couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Grace Hargrove's face, peaceful and perfect, as if death had never touched her. My wife asked what was wrong, and I told her it had been a difficult day at work. How could I explain what I'd seen? How could I make her understand that the natural order of things, the processes I'd witnessed hundreds of times, had somehow been suspended? The autopsy report came back 4 days later. I received a copy because I'd been the exhumation supervisor of record. I read it 3 times, each time hoping I'd misunderstood something, that there was a rational explanation I'd missed. There wasn't. Grace Hargrove's organs were intact and showed minimal decomposition. Her blood, which should have long since broken down into constituent chemicals, was still present in her vessels, though no longer liquid. Her brain tissue, which typically liquefies within weeks of death, was structurally intact. The embalming fluid was present in her tissues at concentrations that shouldn't have been possible after 7 years. The formaldehyde should have broken down, evaporated, or been absorbed. But the most disturbing finding was in her stomach contents. She had food in her stomach, partially digested food. According to her medical records, Grace Hargrove had been in hospice care for 6 weeks before her death, receiving only liquid nutrition through an IV in her final days. She hadn't eaten solid food in over a month, Yet her stomach contained what the pathologist identified as bread, cheese, and apple. Fresh food, recently consumed, showing active digestive enzymes that couldn't possibly still be present 7 years post-mortem. Contamination, Amanda Blake said when I called her. It has to be contamination. Maybe something got into the casket, though I don't know how given the vault seal. Or maybe there was an error in the chain of custody. But it can't be what it appears to be. What does it appear to be? It appears that Grace Hargrove ate a meal shortly before we exhumed her body. Her voice was tight, controlled, which is impossible because she's been dead for 7 years. I didn't go back to work the next day, or the day after that. I called in sick, which I'd done maybe 5 times in 22 years. I couldn't face another grave, another excavation, another body. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Grace Hargrove looking up at me with clear corneas and perfect skin, her stomach full of fresh food, her hair longer than it should be. Raymond called me after a week. "Wes, we need you back. We've got 3 exhumations scheduled this month." "I can't," I said. "You're the best we have. You know that." "I can't look at another body, Raymond. Not after that. It was a fluke. Some weird chemical interaction we don't understand. The coroner's office is calling it an anomaly." "An anomaly? Is that what we're calling impossibilities now?" He was quiet for a moment. "What do you want me to say, Wes? That we saw something that defies science? That there's something going on we can't explain?" I've been in this business for 34 years, and I've learned that there are things that don't fit into neat categories. We document them, we file our reports, and we move on. "I can't move on from this." "Then what are you going to do?" I didn't have an answer then, but 2 days later, I got a call from Travis. "Wes, we've got another one." "Another what?" "Another impossible preservation. Charlotte Deaton, buried 6 years ago in Section 11. Family requested a viewing before cremation. She looks exactly like Hargrove." My hand started shaking. "What?" "Same thing. Perfect preservation, no decomposition. Looks like she died yesterday." Raymond's freaking out. "Amanda Blake is already here. They want you to come in." I drove to the cemetery, my hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Charlotte Deaton's casket was open in the preparation room. She looked alive. 53 years old, died of a heart attack in her home, found by her husband 12 hours after death. 6 years in the ground, and she looked like she was sleeping. "Her husband said something weird when we told him about her condition," Raymond said. "He said she always told him she'd never really leave, that she'd find a way to stay. He thought she was being poetic, talking about memories or legacy. Now he's not so sure." "There's got to be something connecting them," I said. "Same funeral home, same embalmer, same burial date, something?" We checked. Different funeral homes, different embalmers, different burial dates, different sections of the cemetery. The only commonality was Resurrection Cemetery itself and the impossible preservation of their remains. 3 more, Amanda Blake said quietly. She'd been on her phone talking to other cemetery directors in the region. 3 more cases in the past 6 months, different cemeteries, same phenomenon. All women, all buried between 3 and 8 years ago, all showing impossible preservation when exhumed. "Why women?" Travis asked. "We don't know. We don't know anything." Amanda looked at me. "Wes, I need you to help me document this. You're the most experienced exhumation specialist in the county. If this is some kind of pattern, some kind of environmental factor, we need to figure it out." I should have said yes. It was my job. It was what I'd trained for, what I'd spent 2 decades perfecting. But standing there, looking at Charlotte Deaton's peaceful face, thinking about Grace Hargrove eating bread and cheese 7 years after her death, I knew I couldn't do it anymore. "I can't," I said. "I'm sorry, Amanda. Raymond, I can't dig up another grave, wondering if I'm going to find someone who's not quite dead. I can't look at another body that defies everything I understand about death and decay. I just can't." I walked out of the cemetery that day and never went back. My formal letter went in 2 weeks later. I didn't explain why, just said I was pursuing other opportunities. Raymond tried to talk me out of it, offered me a raise, more vacation time, anything I wanted. But how do you explain that you're afraid of what you'll find 6 feet under? How do you tell your boss that you've lost faith in the fundamental truth of your profession, that the dead stay dead? I've been thinking a lot about Grace Hargrove, about the food in her stomach, the hair that had grown, the skin that remained soft and perfect. I've been thinking about Charlotte Deaton and the other 3 cases Amanda mentioned. I've been wondering how many more there are. Bodies lying in graves that look like they're just sleeping, waiting for someone to disturb their rest. I've been wondering if death is as final as we think it is, or if there's some space between living and dying that we don't understand. Some state that looks like death but isn't quite. And I've been wondering if maybe, just maybe, some people don't really leave when we think they do. Maybe they stay, held in some impossible suspension, waiting for something we can't comprehend. I don't work at Resurrection Cemetery anymore, but I drive past it sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, and I look at those 48 acres of rolling hillside with its granite markers and oak trees. And I wonder what's really resting beneath all that carefully manicured grass. I wonder how many of them are truly dead, and how many are just waiting, perfectly preserved, impossible and unexplained. And I wonder if I'm the only one who's afraid to find out.